Today is a great, wonderful, amazing, incredible day because it's a Finland day. Why invading Finland would be a big mistake. Without further ado, let's get into this reaction. Let's go.
After about a year of Finland being in NATO, we've witnessed both saber rattling and threats from their neighbor to the east about why it is a big mistake. Today I'm going to show you that it really isn't, and why attacking Finland, with or without Finland receiving NATO aid, is a really bad idea. Wow,
he said with or without NATO, attacking Finland would be a bad idea. Because Finland's equipped. Okay, let's see.
Let's go. In December 2023, with Finland having formally joined NATO, long table aficionado Vladimir Putin understood that Finland has put an end to working their geopolitical policies around Russia's wants and needs. In his usual bluster, he threatened Finland with unspecified problems, and later announced that he'll put both weapon systems and more troops along Finland's 1,300-kilometer border with Russia. In this video, we'll look at why Putin attacking Finland, even without Finland receiving NATO support, would be a disaster for Russia. No.
Wow, did he really say that? Putin, this guy's always running his mouth, telling people he's going to do this and this and this and that, all these empty threats. He ain't going to put no troops outside of Finland. Is he crazy? Any posturing like that to a NATO nation, and don't play games with us. Like, NATO's powerful, you know. Like, he's not going to do that. I don't believe he would do that to you guys, Finland. I don't think so. Not now that you're a part of NATO, because doing that could trigger something a lot bigger, and we don't want to get into a world war. We really don't. So I think it's all verbal, but I don't think he'll think twice.
No other European nation is as well prepared for such an event as Finland. And their military strategy is focused on doing what they did in the Winter War, which is to inflict such massive casualties on Russian forces that it would be a non-starter. I'd like to note that even if you think that you should go into the comments and say, "but nukes," that mad theory has stopped nukes for as long as more than one nation had them. And why would Russia nuke a country so close to their biggest population centers, causing irradiation in St. Petersburg and Moscow?
Yeah.
In order to estimate where Finland potentially would be attacked, we likely only need to look at history. During the Winter War, the Soviet Union attacked the Mannerheim Line in the south, with smaller second-axis attacks coming in the north towards Petsamo, Lieksa, and Suomussalmi, Sala, Ilomantsi, and Kiti. While the borders shifted slightly since the concessions of Karelia and Petsamo, the vectors would likely look fairly similar. If the war in Ukraine has shown us anything, it is that the Russian army is highly unable to adapt their tactics and still follow the same Soviet doctrines that they always have. During the Winter War, a relatively small Finnish force held the Soviet Union's army, tanks, and aircraft for more than 3 months, while facing odds of more than 100 to 1 in aircraft.
I watched the sickest movie on this. It's on my Patreon. And the way they depicted the scene of them like picking off snipering one by one all these Russian can't even speak soldiers. Sorry, I can't speak today. The way that the Finnish armed forces were just snipering them, like, it was so awesome, so awesome. I just feel like when it comes to winter warfare, when it comes to those cold, icy, snowy climates, like, Finland is not to be messed with. Like, don't step onto that territory. Oh my God, I can't speak. Territory, because you guys really are good at guerrilla warfare.
Tanks and artillery, and at least 3 to 1 in infantry. Finland knows how to deal with a bigger opponent. So let's get into how they'll likely do it. In order to fully understand what sort of undertaking it is to invade Finland, we need to understand what sort of geography is present there. Finland mostly has its cities and farmland to the south, and along the coast around Helsinki, Oulu, Tampere, Jyväskylä, and Tornio. There are some towns further north and towards the border, but they're much further apart and generally sat between massive forests, lakes, and boggy terrain. While it doesn't seem like a good idea to invade Finland via their eastern border, it is likely the only avenue possible, as Finland has an enormous amount of bunkers, coastal artillery, and ground-based anti-ship systems that essentially makes a naval invasion a no-starter. To add to this, their naval mine deployment program is one of the most developed in the world, with an estimated deployment rate of a fully effective naval mine blockade to be operational within a few days. Finland's defense force, even without full mobilization, totals over 280,000 during wartime.
Oof, 280,000 during wartime, but not only have you got 280,000, you have 870,000 reserves. That's where you guys have strength. Because if shit really hit the fan, like if it really got really bad, you have reserves for days. And I feel like with Finnish people, the sense I get is that you would have no qualms taking up arms and fighting for your country. I feel like most Finnish people will be like, if you ask them, I could be wrong, but let me know in the comment section. But I feel like the majority of Finnish people would fight for their country, which is awesome. Whereas actually in countries like my own, like England, a lot of people wouldn't fight for their country, but I feel like in Finland you guys would protect your own. Actually, you know what, I'm saying that about England, but if push came to shove, if someone tried to attack England, we would come together. But the problem is we don't have the reserves. We don't have conscription and we don't have the reserves. So we wouldn't have the amount of people that are trained on how to fight a war, because you guys wouldn't need pushing. You want to serve your country. You guys have like a huge reserve. It's incredible.
With close to 1 million inhabitants having received training and considered of an age where they could serve purposefully in the armed forces when mobilized. For reference, that is more trained personnel than half of the European NATO allies have in total put together.
Exactly.
Initially, it'd be up to the 25,000 or so active military members to hold off the attack while the wartime reserve equips and gathers. Finland's strategy would be to blow up bridges and channel Russian columns into death traps like we saw during the Winter War.
Yeah. Russia would have no chance. They couldn't ever. You guys on your own could hold off the entirety of Russia, but you're part of NATO as well. They would be decimated. Russia would be decimated because you guys would be, holding the front line, and then literally in a day, you would have American forces, British forces, Sweden jumping in, Germany jumping in. Russia could never. They could never step on NATO territory. They just couldn't. Like, I'm not worried because I just know they wouldn't. And nuclear war is just like suicide. If they set up tried to nuclear fallout would hit Russia, so they wouldn't do that. So
each section of Finland's eastern border has designated bridges and areas where the Finnish army trains for this exact mission, with artillerymen receiving direct training in their sector of the potential front. Speaking of artillery, Finland also has the largest artillery capability in Western Europe. It has a staggering 1,500 or more operational systems on hand.
What is that? It's like a cannon, right? But that looks like some type of long-range super cannon. Or is that a what do you call them? That shoots down missiles, shoots down what Israel has. I can't remember what you call it. They've got that machine or whatever it is, but it basically shoots down any type of missile coming towards a country. Is that what this is? Could be wrong. Looks amazing though.
Potential escalation. Finland also has one of Europe's largest stocks of anti-tank capability, and it'd likely be small teams of ATGM squads that would be the first to make contact. These squads would be tasked with taking out the lead and last vehicle in any grouping. forcing the invader to disperse into the boggy terrain. It is what worked really well against the same kind of opponent during the Winter War, and frankly it would prove just as effective today if we judge by similar engagements in Ukraine. The Finnish Air Force would likely be the branch of Finland's defense forces that would struggle the most. Russia's Air Force outnumbers Finland's Air Force by a lot.
So air's not your strong attribute, right? Air is something that you lack. However, you have neighbors that have a very, 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 very strong Air Force. Like, I think the UK has a really great Air Force. America has an incredible Air Force. So you don't have to worry about that. Like, you're going to have backup.
While the F-18 is a capable airframe, it would struggle to operate in an environment against both anti-air assets and fighter jets in the numbers fielded by Russia. It is also worth noting that any missiles that would get through in the initial stages of any invasion would likely ruin any airfield that houses the F-18s. So Finland would likely scramble to get their jets in the air to intercept missiles and planes. Luckily for the Finnish Air Force, Swedish JAS-39s, Norwegian, Danish, and Polish F-35s would likely be in Finland's airspace within hours to assist. The sensible action here would likely be to utilize Swedish air bases early on to avoid Finnish planes being lost on the ground. Finland's defense ministry estimates that Finland would need to hold out for about 12 hours before considerable air support arrives from their neighbors, and a further 2 to 5 days before Norwegian, Swedish, and NATO quick reaction forces come to their aid. Judging from the preparedness of Finland's population, their overall willingness to defend their country puts them in a great position when it comes to deterring any attack.
82% willing to defend the homeland, you see that? If you did the same survey in the UK, I'm telling you now, it would be like 50%. But that's amazing. I love how he said the time frame it would take. So basically, for the entirety of all the NATO backup forces to get to Finland, it would be within a couple of days, 2 to 3 days. You'd probably get the UK's, sending backup within a couple of days. Probably a day. I wouldn't even say a couple of days. I'd say make it a day or so before you'd get France, you'd get Germany, you'd get the UK, you'd get all. Russia could never. It is literally suicide for Russia to even consider stepping foot in Finland.
Attack. Finland's population consistently score the highest in the EU when it comes to willingness to defend their own country with 82%. And that figure is likely to have increased with the latest saber rattling from Putin. It is also worth mentioning that Finland has one of the most extensive bunker and shelter systems out of all nations on Earth, and would likely be able to live through many of the initial missile barrages without much loss of life, as the bunkers were purpose-built during the Cold War against nuclear blasts. And as with many of their fellow Nordic neighbors, they've got storage facilities stacked to the brim with food, supplies, and weapons in case of such an event. For Russia, the issue would quickly become how they defend the P-21 highway and accompanying railway lines, the only heavy-duty transportation networks that goes from St. Petersburg to Murmansk, where Russia's northern fleet and various air assets are housed. Finland is within GMLRS striking distance of this vital supply line for almost 1,000 kilometers of their shared border.
Wow.
Some well-aimed bunker busters would make resupplying any Russian battle groups north of Lake Ladoga a nightmare. In conclusion, if I were a Russian general, which I am glad I am not, I would be doing anything I could to stop anyone from suggesting an attack on Finland.
Yeah.
Not only has Finland strengthened NATO's preparedness, it's increased European NATO abilities, especially when it comes to artillery and infantry by many %. The only weakness you could potentially find is with their Air Force, which is quickly being upgraded to F-35s, and with the advent of the combined Nordic Air Force, is not really a weakness anymore.
No,
We're all glad.
I mean, you got Sweden and you got Norway, who are also part of NATO and also in the same landmass. You're good.
To
You're
have
fine.
you by our side, Finland. Before you go, I'd love to ask you to let us know of any feedback that you have in the comments.
This is a good video. I am very, just like he said, I am very glad that you guys are on the front line because, you know, for the longest time, Sweden and Finland, you've not been part of NATO, and it's been like, oh, you know, like we kind of need you guys because, you know, actually, when you guys weren't part of NATO, I feel like Russia would have reached the UK really easily. They could fly through your airspace and get to us. Now we have you guys on the front line. But I feel like which country is better than Finland to be on the front line? You guys are probably the most prepared in Europe for any potential war. Like your citizens are all, you got conscription, that in of itself, and having over 1 million people that are ready to fight. So good. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Until the next one, I will see you very soon.